manay, mahalo for the paiyay. In a time when a culture could die.
The hippie movement emerged in the 60s, when conscious young people showed that they were not willing to live in the same traditional and conservative way of the time. It was the most non-conforming decade of the last century. The goal was to strike the system, a society that produced misery, violence, hostility, and pain. That process, originated in the United States, was promoted by artists and musicians and has spread to many countries.
Contrary to the Christian religion, they believed that paradise should be found during life, hence the motto adopted Paradise Now. They were against punishment and in favor of the search for pleasure, whether through spiritual or drugs. Another of their best known slogans was peace and love. One of the most widespread hippie culture in the world. It was also the time of the sexual revolution and men hair green and feminine skirting short knits. Breaking the taboo of virgin was seen a way to free people. The contraceptive pill became a feminine weapon in the fight for pleasure. In the United States, during the Vietnam War, it was worth everything. Violence held eggs in the reactionary politicians, knocking in the front of the White House T-shirt with the motto, "Make love, do not make war."
Among the characteristics of hip movement, we can mention colored clothes, barbed men with long hair, girls with flowers in their hair, and songs with guitar and camps. In short, the hippies rejected the consumer society and the traditional family. In addition, they admired the culture of the East, wore Indian robes, and appreciated natural food. They had something of a utopian socialist and pacifist anarchist, because they repudiated the state and capital, opting for community life rather than individualism. They preferred nature to smokes of cities, rock to the noise of machine guns, sex to policy violence, love to consumer society.
The movement most related to hippie that occurred in Brazil was the tropicalism. It was a cultural movement of the late 60s that used debauchery, irreverence, and improvisation revolutionized Brazilian popular music, which was basically restricted to bossa nova. The tropicalists criticized the dictator's form of government and saw freedom of expression of the Brazilians, the freedom to obtain information and to be connected to the world. In addition, the tropicalists also transformed the taste of the age, not only with regards to music and politics, but also behavior, morals, sex, and the way of dressing. Unfortunately, most of the tropicalists were persecuted, and some artists like Gilberto Gil and Caetano Veloso were exiled for presenting criticism contrary to the model of government in their songs. Most of the true hippies in Brazil were heavily repressed and migrated to desert Bahia beaches and to the interior of Goiás, where some of them are there nowadays.
Vamos, eu vou, por que não? Por que não? Por que não?
In Brazil, those winds of protest coincided with the most serious period of the military regime. At the moment when it was arrested, tortured, and eliminated who opposed the government and censorship took over the media, it came a young man of Bahia playing legitimate rock and roll in Rio de Janeiro, ironizing the current values and preaching strange things like selfishness, free love, and the unconditional freedom of the human being. His idea of alternative society would be much more radical and would gain strong mystical connotations. It all started in 1971 when he met Paulo Coelho. editor of the alternative magazine 2001. Those two creative and hallucinatory heads would plunge into a sea of references to conceive songs with previously unpublished themes here. In addition to the Nutopia of Lennon and Yoko, they were inspired by classic authors of anarchism and individualism, such as Pierre-Joseph Proudhon and Max Stirner. An unusual marketing strategy proposed by Paulo Coelho led the first ideas of the alternative society to homes throughout Brazil. On June 7, 1973, Raul Seixas called the press to register his appearance in Rio Branco Avenue, in the center of Rio, guitar in hand, singing the song "God of Fool". It worked. The scene was shown in the Jornal Nacional, in the prime time of the TV. The song was a slap in the national conformism before the illusory advantages offered by the dictatorship. God of Fool is the name given in the Middle Ages to the promises of false alchemists. Transposing the idea to the 1970s, Raul Seixas reduced to nothing the aspirations of the middle class that supported the economic miracle of the dictatorship. The euphoria watered by the social stability of the respectable citizen and a conformist religious vision was simply a God of Fool.
The persecution of young people who behaved differently for authoritarian normality was very strong in the dictatorship, but it still exists today. Not only militants of leftist movements or parties, but also young people who have been tortured or disappeared for having joined the counterculture or simply for behaving differently from that imposed by the society of the normal, must be considered as missing politicians. Despite their obvious difference, both left-wing and counterculture youths were subjected to arrest and forced internments by state representatives and society, such as conservative parents and psychiatrists connected with the dictatorship during the lead years.
Contente por ter conseguido tudo que eu quis, mas confesso abestalhado que eu estou decepcionado. Porque foi tão fácil conseguir, agora eu me pergunto, e daí? Eu tenho uma opção de coisas grandes pra conquistar e eu não posso ficar aí parado. Eu devia estar feliz pelo Senhor ter me concedido um domingo pra ir com a família no jardim zoológico, dar pipoca aos macacos. Ah, mas que sujeito chato sou eu que não acha nada engraçado. Macaco, praia, carro, jornal, tobogão, eu acho tudo isso um saco.